Welcome, everyone. Welcome. My name's Tami Simon. I'm the founder of Sounds True, and it's my joy and honor to welcome you to this special webinar, Teaching to Transform, Mend Our World by Becoming a Teacher of Mindfulness and Compassion. I'm here with two of the most beloved, creative, and generative meditation teachers of our time, Tara Brach and Jack Kornfield. And they are both, in addition to being meditation teachers, clinical psychologists. And I notice I lean into that and welcome that expertise, particularly at this time when so many of us are in our own journey of finding how to be as balanced, grounded, and effective as we can be in our own lives to help our families, our communities, and to reach out and help others. Jack and Tara are the creators of the Mindfulness Meditation Teacher Certification Program. This is a 2-year online training program. 7,000 people from 70 countries have graduated already. And when you graduate, you get a certificate from the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley. And we're currently in the process of receiving applications for our next cohort. We only run the program once every 2 years, and you can learn more. We'll put a link in the chat. And if you're watching the replay of this, you'll see that you can click the Learn More button on the player page. And we're going to be talking about this notion of teaching to transform. Jack, Tara, welcome.
Hey, hi Tammy. Hi everyone. Good to be with you.
Yeah, thank you, Tammy. I'm so glad to see all you people in the little squares. It's a pleasure to meet you or connect. Maybe some of you, when I look, I know you and I go, oh, that would be cool if we get to work together.
Here at the start, I think when people hear this notion, teaching to transform, what can occur to us, of course, is how by becoming a teacher, we are going to transform others. But I actually wanted to start with your view of how teaching transforms the teacher. And if you could each talk about that from your own personal experience and what you think the act of teaching itself does to transform the teacher.
Yeah, I'd love to start. First of all, I just want to say that this program is one of the best things I've ever done in my life. I've done a lot of teaching and writing in centers and things, and this feels like the culmination with you, Tara, and Sounds True, of all our years of work and kind of pouring in the best that we know in all kinds of ways and lessons and mentors and community. You'll hear about it. And it really transforms people. And the essence from your question that's so beautiful is that I've been training teachers for 3 or 4 decades. And I love to watch people blossom, people who are in themselves maybe hesitant. Could I teach? What do I do with this? And then as you learn and as you partner with others and you practice, it draws what's beautiful out of you. You become the very thing that you teach. And to watch people grow in that way, even from initial hesitation and questions and so forth, is one of the sweetest things that I ever get to participate in. It's really a special field to be part of with others.
Yeah, just to add, I mean, as Jack said, it brings out who people are. You know, it's like it's already in them, but teaching actually brings it out. I'm thinking of one teacher I was with who I've known for a number of years, and he used to be kind of very dedicated to being heard, having other people get his wisdom. And I was just with him in a small group, and just to watch him listening and to sense that through these years of teaching transformed him to hold a space for others that was just the presence was so beautiful. And just to speak personally about, you know, for me, teaching it lets me spend huge swaths of my time paying attention to what most matters to me, which is how mindfulness and compassion can wake up our hearts and minds. And I get to do that with other people. You know, it's amazing to be with other people and really reflecting on what wakes us up. And what that means is that when difficulty arises in my life, as it does in every life, it's more quickly held in that space of what we're all facing. Plus anything really challenging, I know I get to use as a good teaching talk, you know, eventually. But I'll give you an example just of how it transforms us. It was last week I was teaching a retreat, and during the retreat, my back started spasming. And in my old self, I would have immediately felt oppressed and I got sidelined some. I couldn't teach all the things I wanted to. I would have felt like I was letting people down. I would have spiraled into something that felt like failure. But because I was in teaching mode and what I've learned from it, there was a sense, oh, this is the practice. There are huge numbers of other people going through physical or emotional pain. In other words, it connected me with something larger. And that's what I've seen happens to people who become teachers, that there's a sense that, you know, that the light and love of the universe is flowing through, not that I'm doing it, but belonging to something larger. And that is such a sweet experience.
Can you both tell us a little bit about the origin story, if you will, of the teacher training program?
Tara, start, please.
Well, Jack knows I love this story because it happened in my kitchen. So
Which is where all good things happen.
all good things happen, exactly, all the real communing. So there we were talking about the future of the world and how what the world needs is to evolve consciousness. It's the only hope to wake up our hearts and minds, and how we need more teachers for that. And one of the things we were realizing, because we both love training teachers, is that there are a lot of wonderful, wise beings all around the globe who don't have access to training programs. And we started visioning, and there were a few main things that mattered to us as we thought about what we'd want on an online training. And one is that it would serve diverse populations. And we wanted to train diverse teachers, you know, non-dominant race, religion, sexual preference, orientation, gender, identity, all of that. And we wanted to train in how to teach diverse populations, how to be sensitive and respectful to diversity. So we started outlining what's our vision. We wanted to be able to address trauma. You know, we wanted to have a program that could bring mindfulness alive in relationships. We wanted to have a program that was really dedicated to serving our world. So that all happened in one kitchen table conversation. And Jack, on whatever you want to add, I still love that it happened that way.
Yeah, it was very exciting. And then we began to brainstorm and talk with Tami. And one of the things that's been pressing for me and for most of us is the state of the world and the concerns that, you know, weigh on our hearts or touch us, whether it's climate change or divisiveness or war, those kind of things. And we want to figure out how to respond, how to make a difference. And it's really clear that no amount of outer development of computers and artificial intelligence and nanotechnology and biotechnology and all that stuff is going to stop warfare. It's going to stop our climate destruction, you know, racism, conflict, because all those are rooted in the human heart. And so, as Tara said, the kind of transformation that the world needs, we need to match the outer development of the world now as humanity with an inner development. And the beautiful thing is that there are practices and trainings in compassion and loving kindness and mindful, loving attention that we can learn to bear witness to what's happening, to respond. And that's embedded in what we're doing. So we got very excited because the word for mindfulness in Sanskrit or Pali Sati Sampajanya has two parts. The first part is mindful presence, to be present for all of it, the whole, as Zorba said, the whole catastrophe. And the second part, like breathing in and breathing out, is mindful response. And we wanted to build a program where you could really deepen your sense of mindful presence, no matter where you were and what circumstance, and with all the things in your life in the world, and then have a training and a sense of how to respond mindfully. And that is kind of part of the origin of it as well.
You know, sometimes people ask me about the origin of Sounds True, and did I ever imagine it would be the size and have the influence that it has today? And I always say, you know, what I imagined was something much, much, much bigger, which makes me know that I'm still working on it. I'm still in that process, but I saw something really huge. And I'm curious, when you were at the kitchen table, what you saw, 7,000 graduates already, what was the big seed vision at that kitchen table that you saw in terms of impact and influence?
I would say for me that it was teachers in every part of the world, in every community, and communities that are feeling their support and belonging with each other, that are actually creating the change that we believe in the world, like that big, everywhere, communities and teachers. And it doesn't have to be a particular flavor of mindfulness, more that practices of presence that wake up the heart, connect people, and then inspire people to act on behalf of the larger good of the world.
And kind of following with that, part of the vision was imagining we can train people who will work in schools, who will work in businesses, who will work in, you know, as social change agents, who will bring this into their family systems and the greater family, who will work in politics, who will work in medicine. All these places, which is actually what's happened, become places where when you learn, when you train how to teach somebody to be present and mindful, to bring a kind of loving awareness to their own experience, and then to respond in a wise way, it doesn't matter, you know, whether you're working in a hospital or a business, everything changes. And there's this vision of what's possible that we can do as human beings. That's the very thing that both satisfies our own heart and also is the direction that the world so needs.
So I'm imagining that there are people joining us now who are feeling a combination of things. I'm sure many, many things that I can't imagine, but as I'm imagining, I feel excited. I kind of want to do this, but I have these reservations. I have these hesitations. My own practice right now is kind of on again, off again, maybe more off again. Am I a qualified applicant for this program if that's my situation?
That's a great question. And I love it because almost everybody I know has an on again and off again practice. And if they don't say it, generally they're not being straight about it, because that's our human nature. Things change in that way. What this does, if you decide to become part of it, and you don't just get, you know, hours of great teaching and instruction, but you get mentors who get to know you, and you become part of a small mentor group, and you know each other for 2 years, and you meet dozens of times together and become heart partners in this. What it does somehow is it evokes and inspires and brings the practice alive for you. So you say, yeah, I haven't trained enough, or I don't know, or I'm not so consistent. This is a really, it's a practice. It's not just, okay, now I'm going to be a great teacher. This is a way to learn how to practice deeply that then comes out of you as you know, when you get to your practicum, as you pass it on. So in fact, I'm more interested in people who have hesitation than the ones who say, I'm great, I'm going to be a great teacher. Uh-oh. The doubts are actually more human or humble. There's a humility and an honesty in it. And that's where we connect with everybody else in some way. Here we are in this human predicament. And there is a way for us to grow our hearts, our understanding that's really beautiful. And, you know, you start where you are. That's actually the key to deep practice.
Anything to add to that, Tara?
No, it sounded right on to me.
All right, Jack, you mentioned a practicum for people who are like, what's that? What am I going to be participating in the program? What's the practicum component?
So the first year of the program, and again, it's quite thorough. We go through a whole curriculum of mindfulness of body, how to work with emotions, how to work with thought structures, how to work with anxiety and fear and joy and longing and excitement. We do heart practices of loving kindness and compassion. We do movement training. You get all these kind of things in a very systematic way. And you also get them, as I said, by really deeply connecting with a small group that you become part of. Everybody's in a little mentor pod of 6 people for 2 years that really support each other with a mentor, and then other groups you can join. What happens after the first year of digesting and practicing and playing with it, then you start to practice teaching with one another, giving voice to what you've learned, experimenting with that. And then in the second year, you're asked to do a practicum, which means you actually practice teaching. And some do it in their local school, some volunteer at the local library, some do it at their business or the clinic where they work or whatever it is. But people find a place where they believe others will be interested in listening. They invite or ask, and some folks will come. And then you get support for learning how to teach, not just as an intellectual kind of idea or process, but what is it like to actually be with others and help guide them in opening, and be with them when things are difficult and say, oh, this is how you work with it. This is the very gift of mindful, loving presence, of the opening of the mind and heart.
Just to add that before you do the practicum, you have plenty of time to practice how to lead a meditation and how to answer questions that come up and how to offer short talks to describe the teaching. So plenty of practice in that. And then I would just want to name that a lot of people, when they're approaching their practicum, have some apprehension, like, you know, who am I to be doing this? Which is natural. And they come out of it and they find it, even right at the beginning, it's such a gratification, the sense of, wow, this stuff really works. And it happens because people are so grateful. And as Jack said, it could be just a group of friends. You know, some people do very, very small groups of friends. Some people will go into wherever they're working and say, hey, anybody want to do this at lunch for 6 weeks, or, you know, whatever it is. But the bottom line is that it's not until we just get out there and do it, try it on, that our body feels it, our heart feels it, and we sense, wow, this is an amazing way to serve.
You have a two-part question here. First, that person who's having a lot of questioning of, you know, I really was drawn to the program when I was focused on how it was going to deepen my practice, but I'm not 100% sure I want to teach. Is this program for me if I'm not sure I want to take that teaching seat?
I've had so many people ask me that because I'm from Washington. A lot of people from this region have gotten involved, and the best way I have of kind of explaining it is that we're always teaching on some level as a parent or as a friend or in all of our relationships. And it's fine to do this program and know you want to deepen your own personal healing and spiritual awakening. And you don't know how you're going to do it. It's going to be some informal part of your relationships. And that's fine. To give yourself permission to leave the definition of teaching wide open so that you can live into what that means for you.
And then the second part that I wanted to bring forward, it circles back to this notion of how teaching can transform us. And I wonder if you could both speak to this, which is something that I've seen, is that when coming forward, being asked to give voice to what I know, that doing that, and I'll speak personally from my own life, that's been one of the biggest excruciating learning and growth journeys I've ever been on. Even if it's just a couple people, let alone when there's larger groups, because there's so much involved in that. And I'm curious for you both to speak to that, what you've seen from people, because you risk, you say something, you didn't say it the way you wanted to when you were young, that you're punished, humiliated. I mean, it's such a growth journey to come forward and give voice to what you know.
Well, first of all, the point of these practices is, to put it simply, is not to perfect yourself, but to perfect your love, your ability to be present for this life and for one another. But quite, specifically, I can remember a time I was sitting in front of a large group. It wasn't a small group. Here I am, Jack, sitting up there teaching meditation, and I was supposed to be teaching loving kindness practice. Well, I'd had a bad argument with my beloved at the time, and I was really quite pissed off and angry and kind of indignant. But there I was trying to teach people loving kindness, and I'm not feeling it, but I had to do it. And I would say, okay, picture someone you care about and send them, your best wishes of loving kindness. And then I thought, no, I'm going to call them. I'm really going to let them know how that, and I could watch my mind doing this whole thing, which of course I could have been disappointed in myself. But actually it turned out to be an amazing practice, because I could watch the mind go back and forth. And the training and awareness says, this is what minds do. And in the middle of it, I continue to do the loving kindness teaching. And the beautiful thing is, I was teaching myself. By the time it was over, I said, okay, I got to do this differently, even though all that reactivity was there. And it was kind of a perfect example of how the notion that we teach someone else, we're the teacher, we're actually in this together as human beings. And when we let ourselves kind of be there with our humanity, that's actually when we really connect with people.
Anything to add, Tara?
No, maybe just to say that almost everyone that enters the program, and you'll hear it over and over again, has that conditioned self-doubt. Who am I to do this? It was, in the Buddhist tradition, it's like the biggest challenge that the Buddha encountered in the waking up process. It's that self-doubt. And one of the transformations that happens is that we start not taking it as personally, that there's a self that's the one that's doing it. And I can say for myself, in the early days, so much anxiety about imperfection, so much fear of failure. There's a goof among the teachers that you're only as good as your last Dharma talk. And it's like, you get the idea. It's like such a small-minded thing to think we are making big spiritual changes in others. And one of the awakenings and freedoms that come is just this sense that we're tapping into a stream way larger than a personal self. And if we relax and let go of thinking we're doing something and just love what we love, it comes through. And that just takes time. And then we begin by just acknowledging the vulnerability of being unsure. And that's okay too.
And part of that stream that we're a part of teaching, which goes back for thousands of years, is that there are these very simple and powerful practices of how you actually work with emotions or with thoughts or with fear or with an anxiety or whatever those are. They're really compelling and transformative practices, and you get to offer them. It's not like you're offering yourself. You're saying, here are these beautiful tools that I've learned, and they make a difference, and you can use them too. And then when people get them, they go, oh, it's so different. When they learn the forgiveness practice, I didn't realize that there's a way systematically to work with things that I've been upset about to move through a process with forgiveness and transform the heart. And so you're in some way, in going through the program and in learning these things, you're carrying something, you're given something, and you're carrying something that human beings have passed on from warm hand to warm hand for generations, saying, here's a beautiful gift of how to live wisely, and you can do it too.
It's beautiful, very inspiring. For that person who's still reflecting on, I wonder if I have what it takes to be an effective teacher, could you describe the qualities, the capacities that you see in teachers who are effective, and how we develop those capacities? Maybe I don't feel I have them right now. How am I going to develop them through the program?
All right, I'll start. First of all, the qualities of a teacher vary a great deal. They're really personal. This is not like a, cookie cutter thing. You're an auto mechanic and this is how you fix the transmission. Some people are introverted and quiet, and their voice is quiet, and their heart is quiet, and they teach from a place that when they become authentic, which is part of that quality, people go, oh yeah, I can quiet with them. Others have a tremendous kind of passion for waking up, for changing the world, and that informs their voice. So there isn't one way, but who you are that builds or gets supported in the practice and in the training with greater confidence, with a willingness to be, I won't say humble, but in some way, not very judgmental of yourself or others, to try things out, to experiment. So there's a kind of patience, a willingness to experiment, and probably underneath it all is a sense of kindness, that if you care for yourself and you express and you embody that kind of care for others, they feel it and they go, oh, I could hold myself with that self-compassion. I could hold myself with the possibility of graciousness in the middle of all the things I'm doing. And so there's a kind of communing that happens, and that grows naturally as you practice in all the ways that are part of the training. I don't know what Tara would add to that.
Yeah, it's a huge range of personality and so on. I'd say there are some common denominators. One is a love for love, and another would be a love for truth. Just really like that kind of curiosity, like just a lifelong learner that wants to know what's true, what's reality, that curiosity, and a love of sharing what you love with others. So there's a lot of love right at the heart. There's kind of a passion that's deep. There's a phrase that we teach from the radiance of our own discovery. So it can come through all the different forms and shapes of who we are, but there's some loving of waking up that's contagious. And that, that expression, as Jack said, it just keeps getting more full over time. So we really can become wholehearted in it.
Earlier, Jack, you talked about how no amount of AI, biotechnology, nanotechnology is going to solve the challenges we face right now as a human species, the environmental challenges, political challenges. And I think many of us are really quite acutely aware of this, grieved and concerned, and are drawn to this possibility right now of being teachers of mindfulness and compassion so that we can be more all in bringing our energy to be part of the solution to the world's challenges. And at the same time, I can hear a voice of doubt that says, are teaching mindfulness and compassion to people, is that really going to make a difference, enough of a difference, especially? And I mean, aren't we just putting like a quarter in an empty bucket in, you know, a world that's gone mad? And I wonder how you both might respond to that. Social architects that I think of you both as, people who have really looked at our current situation.
So when I listen to, I feel a kind of a weight in my heart, or maybe even little tears in my eyes, because it is hard to hold all of this. That's the first thing. And part of what we invite others to join us in is the archetype of the bodhisattva. Bodhisattva means a being who has intended or deliberately chooses to bring benefit to beings with their life, wherever they can, to alleviate suffering. And what that means, really simply, is that we don't turn our gaze away, that even if it brings tears or it touches the heart in hard ways, that the bodhisattva turns and says, yes, I will gaze. And not only that, I will reach out with my hand and mend the places that I can. If you say, I'm going to change the whole world, that would be hubris. You know, that's inflation. And it doesn't help. That's actually part of the problem. But if you say, let me, where I am, extend my heart and my hand to the places that I can transform and make a difference, it has a huge ripple effect. Just like we have these 7,000 people out there, and some are teaching in, you know, hospitals, or we have a graduate who's training surgeons in New York in mindfulness, and we have people who are working in places in a project for women survivors of domestic violence, and we have people teaching in tweens in middle school or senior centers. But we also have people like women in Pakistan who are teaching women in a clinic there, or a man in Nairobi who's teaching in the school systems how to keep a mindful presence and bring that into the society around. And wherever these are taught, they stabilize, they offer people an idea of how we can live differently. And that's actually what's going to change the world. It's not more consumerism, and clearly it's not just the politicians. May they be happy and well, and bless them. It really has to take all of us.
Yeah, just to add to that, and thank you, Jack, because I'm right there. What's going on in current times is triggering off so many people feeling upset, angry, fearful, powerless, reactive. And one of the incredible offerings of mindfulness and the essence of the Bodhisattva path is to be able to shift from reacting to responding. And we really need that right now. And maybe just by way of example, that I was in a recent gathering, meditation gathering, and people were sharing their upset. This is in the United States about the upcoming elections, you know, keep waking them up in the middle of the night. Well, how does mindfulness help? Well, we explored, you know, instead of focusing on what's happening out there, first bring the attention inward mindfully to the reaction here. And people would say, okay, I'm fearful of the descent into authoritarianism. I'm fearful of the loss of democracy, of the great suffering of those who are vulnerable. And then mindfulness would say, okay, open to that fear. And then people would find, and this happened in this group, this real sadness about the trajectory, and under the sadness, even a caring. So they went from reactive and distressed to caring. And then we had a collective inquiry with the question, what is love asking from me? Because part of compassion is to respond. So it's not a passive kind of teaching. It's a teaching that says, come to the very grounds of a wise response, which is presence, which is openness, which is our capacity to really rest in a spacious and intelligent way, and from there respond. Because if we're responding from anger and hatred, it's just going to seed more of the same. And I'm seeing right now, as Jack mentioned, there's so much going on in the world in this direction of activism from a deep wisdom. One of our graduates is training political activists in mindfulness. We need that. Another teacher is creating a mindfulness and climate resilience program, just launched at 9 University of California campuses. One of our grads, I'm giving you these examples to give you a flavor, is started the largest mindfulness group in Israel. And I joined them for an event last December. Being mindful meant being real, being vulnerable, feeling the suffering, not turning the gaze, and then ending with prayers. One of the beautiful prayers is, may all the children be safe. May all the children be well. One more example would be 2 Palestinian teachers who are leading a meditation group for Palestinians. And I joined them last month. And again, the same thing, mindfulness of the depth of the vulnerability. And in staying present with that, one of the prayers as we closed was, may I remember the love. May I remember love when the forces for hatred are so great. So friends, I'm sharing this with you to give you a sense that it's very immediate and it's very real, that if we want a world where humans respond from presence and love, not from hate and reactivity, we need to train the heart in these ways.
There's a beautiful passage from the explorer, adventurer, Wade Davis, where he says, despair is a failure of imagination. That we can get despairing or see people despairing around the world. But part of what happens in the training for yourself and others, and the part of the beautiful part is that it affects both of you, is that it's a kind of empowerment, what Tara's talking about, that in the circumstances, the graduates who are working in a drug rehab center or working in jails and prisons, they carry a kind of empowerment that says, we can hold this, we can transform this, you learn it, it's possible. And that empowerment is exactly what the world is in need of now.
Just to underscore something, Jack, when you introduced the word bodhisattva, I noticed my heart quite tenderized, softened, and also kind of I felt myself take my seat more just hearing that word. And I think sometimes we think of a bodhisattva as like this rare group of people over there, these great figures, and not that that's our inner calling too. That's available to all of us to function that way and that we feel called to that. So I wonder if you could both speak to that notion. Everyday bodhisattvas.
There's a part of us, a very deep part of us, that actually wants to make a difference in this world, even if it's a little bit hidden or we're lost at certain times or frightened. Something that means so much to us is actually to be able to offer the goodness of our life in some way. That's what inspires and uplifts us and makes a difference. And that capacity, which we have in ourselves, it's not out there. I mean, I criticized one of my famous teachers in Asia because I said, you're not exactly you don't look like you're being as mindful as I thought a teacher should be. And he loved it. He just broke out laughing. He said, that's great. I said, why is that? And he said, because you think you're going to find it out here. And it's not out here. It's in your own heart, what you're looking for. And so there's an empowerment in that, in ourselves, because it's what we want. We want to be able to sit up tall or to tend and mend and care, because that's our true nature. And coming into a community like this training, where you really meet with others and you get supported week after week or month after month with others doing this, it changes you and it empowers you in this beautiful way.
I just want to add to that the key realization of a bodhisattva is that we belong to each other. And that the main suffering in our world is that we've forgotten that. And that on the bodhisattva path, there's not so much of a sense of, oh, I am a bodhisattva and I am going to help the world as I can. Not even that I am empowered. It's a sense of that we're empowered as we wake up together. And what I love about this teacher training program is I've seen that in people. I've seen people in joining hands, sensing we can help. We can make a difference. And it comes from that sense of kind of that togetherness. It's so easy when we feel isolated to feel powerless. And it's because we're thinking we're a separate self that we should be doing something. And as we start holding hands, it's not should, it's we act together because we care.
And people come up to me from the program and they say, MMTCP changed my life. It really changed the way I live, who I feel myself to be. So there's something so beautiful about the community that you become part of that Tara's talking about.
And Tara, you mentioned teachers who have been trained who are now working in Palestine and in Israel. And I think sometimes when people think of, I want to make a difference in the world and be an activist, they don't think of something like teaching meditation as a form of activism. And I wonder how you both see that. Is it a form of activism in your view?
So it depends, because we have a very individualistic society, and mindfulness can be taught, primarily focusing on, what am I feeling? What am I needing? How to be with my own inner experience. Or, as more and more people are doing, sensing we belong to this world, feeling what's inner, but also, as Jack said so beautifully, the bodhisattva keeps a gaze on all the suffering that's around. And so that's our emphasis. And when we train to kind of sustain our attention, and this is the training, to really include others, it naturally arouses that responsiveness. So it does lead, it's the grounds of activism. And I think of, teaching in Washington, because of where we are, I've been teaching on Capitol Hill and Superior Court justices. And one of them had this huge workload, and he was dealing with the most vulnerable populations, huge suffering. And he realized that he was really numb, he was really cut off. So he did a mindfulness training, and the kind of mindfulness training that taught that attention to the vulnerability of others. And he said that the practice brought him back to his heart. He said that each human is a human. He sees the humanness, the light in the eyes of each human that is in front of him, and is able to respond to with more presence and care. And I name that as an example of, it would have been fun. We could have taught a kind of practice where you're just paying attention to what's inside you, but it's that inclusion of each other and of our animal friends and of the earth that makes it really an activist practice.
There's also, I've been doing training of human rights activists from around the world, many of whom have, been in prison or had their lives threatened, things like that. And I have to remind them as we do the trainings about Mahatma Gandhi, who in the middle of leading, millions of people to lift the colonial enterprise of the British Empire off of the Indian people, millions of people in the streets and so forth. Gandhi took 1 day a week in silence. So it could be in the middle of huge, there were riots and people moving and people dying and all of this. And they would come and say, Gandhiji, we need you out there. Things are happening. He'd say, I'm sorry, it's Thursday. It's my quiet day. And what he would say is, I need to get quiet and listen so that I can act from the purest place in my heart, so that I can bring the wisdom. And we know this when we take a breath, when we stop, There's a kind of sacredness to the stillness. And these activists, when they are reminded of this, just like Tara was saying about that judge, all of a sudden, oh yeah, I can do this from a different place. And so you can't even separate them. They're really part of a whole.
Now, you probably both noticed, and those who are with us here noticed, when I introduced Jack and Tara, I emphasized this notion that they're clinical psychologists. And I thought to myself, even as I was saying that, why are you doing that, Tami? And the reason is that I feel very in touch with the challenges, the psychological challenges that appear to be on the increase right now in our culture. The growth in anxiety, depression, all kinds of mental health challenges, teen suicide. And I wonder if you could speak specifically to how the training in mindfulness and compassion and being a teacher can help us be empowered to address the mental health challenges in our culture and in our world.
You know, this question really speaks to both of our life work, which is putting together the wisdom of Eastern psychology and also drawing some of the best of Western psychology. So what we begin to discover is that the powerful trainings from Eastern psychology of mindful, loving presence, of forgiveness and compassion, and the ways that we work with our own heart and mind, those then can be folded in or draw on the Western understandings of trauma or the Western understandings of conflict resolution that are part of the training and the best of the training in Western psychology, that we can draw those in, and we've integrated them into the program. It's primarily the program of transforming the heart and mind from these great traditions, and it includes those tools as well that are exactly what's needed for people who are experiencing depression, anxiety, fear, confusion, loss of ground, and so forth. There's beautiful teachings of how to work with this. And they come primarily from the Eastern tradition, but then they get supported by all this new understanding in Western psychology.
I'm really glad for this question because it's an epidemic level and it's only going to grow because of, it's just, we're in an existential, there's existential fear on the planet, because of the climate crisis and so much instability. So it's growing, and it's a horror to read about teenage girls writing suicide notes. Like, I think it's like 25% of them wrote a suicide note within the last year or so. It was huge statistics. It's scary. And it's the reason that US Surgeon General Vivek Murthy has actually offering mindfulness meditations. There's a reason. It's so much research. And as Jack said, there's the centuries of people finding that there's an amazing power when we can train our minds to pause, to touch what's going on, and to hold it with kindness. So one of the things that it feels clear is that we need more people to teach this, and also it needs to be in all the institutions. And that is, as Jack mentioned, that's what's happening. Because Tami, you described how to have it be widespread in the society. It has to be in the schools. Children need to know how to calm themselves down, how to deal with bullying, how to deal with addiction, the whole thing. It needs to be in prisons. It needs to be in every institution. And that's happening. That's one of the things that gives me the most hope, is how there's not an institution in our society that isn't now beginning to offer mindfulness trainings of some sort.
And just to make something explicit, I think sometimes when people think of being trained as a teacher, they might have an image, sort of the way I was trained in meditation, that I'm going to go off to a meditation hall someplace. I'm going to spend weeks, in my case, whatever, but weekends working with a teacher. But what I hear you both saying and weaving in throughout this conversation in the all the ways that we can bring this teaching function into all kinds of professions and creatively merge it in, perhaps with what we're already doing, even if I'm, working, not that I ever could work as a nurse or in the, because the sight of blood makes me faint, but whatever we might be doing, we could actually incorporate if we want. So I wonder if you could speak a little bit to that creative blending of this teacher function in different professions.
I mean, it's so true. I mean, one of the graduates who's a photographer is now teaching mindfulness-based photography, and there's no exceptions. It's like mindfulness allows us to bring a presence in our intelligence and wakefulness to anything we're doing. Another grad, and the reason I know about this so much is because I sat on her committee, organizational consultant, and she wrote this pioneering dissertation on using mindfulness-based compassion and offering feedback in the workplace. I mean, it can go in any particular direction. That last week I was with a woman who was on the retreat, a graduate from Buenos Aires, and she's creating a platform for mindfulness platform for Spanish-speaking people. It's really the beauty of it is that you can do this training, and whatever you're doing, whoever are part of your relational field, it'll come alive there.
And then I just have one final question, and then maybe we could end in some kind of meditative space together, feeling our shared heart and our shared belonging and love going out into the world. So, Jack, Tara, you can see if one of you will feel inspired to offer that. But the last question I have is, you've both dedicated your lives to teaching meditation, and now training teachers for many years as well, training teachers together through this program. I hope you'll tell me the truth here. What are the biggest challenges when it comes to being a teacher, truth be told, and then the greatest rewards as well?
Well, there are a number of challenges because human life is challenging. One of them is just how to make a balanced life from the beginning. How could I be a good father and a good husband and a good community member and also be traveling around and teaching retreats? How did I live a balanced life? And it took a while to figure it out. So that was a really huge challenge. Another challenge was to take what were traditional teachings and then weaving in the wisdom of the West and Western psychology and so forth. And I got a lot of flack and, pushback. You're not keeping it the way it was in wherever it was, the old country in Asia. And beginning to trust, because I felt that, and then say, we're in a different time and a different place. And even in the Buddhist tradition, when you go back, the Buddha said, teach in the language of the people that you meet. So I've had to wrestle with that and learn somehow to trust in myself that what we're doing is growing something that's really beautiful with a strong root, but being willing also to be creative.
So challenges, just what you named, Jack, that balancing, that making it relevant for today. And I'll just loop back to what I said earlier, which is it matters so much to me, this domain of waking up together, that when I'm in my small self-judging self, it's easy to get critical and, keep monitoring. Am I falling short? Am I doing this right? And so that has become part of practice. I mean, that has actually been a central part of practice, is just to watch when I'm taking it personally and I'm thinking Tara is teaching others, and go to the place of the squeeze, bring mindfulness to it, bring heart to it, and then find that sense of, oh, okay, we're all friends right now. I'm just sensing it right now. Here we are together and we're friends, and there's not a doer. There's just a sense of paying attention together, waking up together. So I would say that's the challenge, and the rewards.
Or fulfillment, if you will, the fulfillment
Yeah,
of it.
it's really bearing witness to people waking up and trusting the love and the light that's living through them, and seeing it all. Again, since I was at retreat last week with people, I saw one woman with that inner healing that comes when she felt the freedom to forgive her father. Oh my gosh, that was just, it was so beautiful. And then I saw a man, and he's in recovery from addiction. He'd struggled so much with the shame from addiction. And in these last 2 years, he's been opening to trust the wisdom and goodness in him. And now he's helping so many others. So I got to watch that, and a mom sharing about her 6-year-old. She started teaching her 6-year-old how to be with her feelings. Her daughter's name is Anna. I'll just share this with you because I loved it. She said her daughter's able to now catch herself when she's upset sometimes, and breathe sometimes, and then hug herself and say, I love you, Anna. So it's the gratification of seeing people, different stages of their life, wake up. And one of the teachers that happened to be there, one of the graduates, because a number of graduates came to the retreat, shared with me that before the training, he did a kind of reflection where he said, he imagined himself at the end of his life looking back, and he just said, what's going to most matter? And what he got was living really true to my heart. And then he looked at me, he said, and here I am, and I'm teaching, and I'm sharing what I love, and my life's aligned. So it's seeing people come aligned with their hearts that's just so beautiful.
And Jack, you didn't mention anything on the fulfillment side.
Well, MMTCP has been amazingly fulfilling, just watching people bloom and blossom. And we used to say, when people would come on retreats and they would come stressed and haggard in the middle, and then they'd have some days to quiet their minds and tend their heart and bring a loving mindfulness and let things release and hold them. Then we talked about, there was a phrase, the Vipassana facelift, or the mindfulness facelift, that you'd see them at the end of a retreat, and it was like they were bathed in something beautiful. Something had changed them. So it's actually visible, whether it's a retreat, which everyone who does the program will do at least some retreat, or whether it's the training that we do together and you let yourself practice. It's there in your body and heart. It changes you. And to see it, it's dazzling. It's really beautiful.
Again, friends, we offer the MMTCP program, Mindfulness Meditation Teacher Certification Program, once every 2 years. We're currently accepting applications for our next cohort. And just to let you know, we have an early registration deadline. It's June 15th, and you're able to save $1,500, a substantial amount, if you apply and register before June 15th. We'll put a link in the chat, and then if you're watching this as a recording later, you can hit the Learn More button under the player and learn more and apply to the program. Either Jack or Tara, could you lead us in a brief closing, connect to our shared heart radiance experience?
Sure, I'm glad to. I love to. So take a moment, wherever you are, whatever's going on, to let this be a pause. The pauses can be so healing. You might let your attention go inward. You might take a few full breaths. Sense that you're breathing into your heart, out of your heart. I like to put my hand on my heart to really bring it to that kind of heart presence. And you might perhaps have that simple reflection, if you're at the end of your life looking back, what matters in just this moment? What's the quality of attention or presence or heart that matters? Just reminding yourself of what's important to you, feeling your sincerity. And feeling that as you widen your attention and sense all those gathered, all those who may be listening, and wider yet to the beings in your life, how we all share that same longing to belong, and deep down that same love of love, love of truth. And our shared prayer that that heart space might widen and widen, rippling out to touch our world, to bring healing to our troubled, precious, beautiful world. Thank you.
Thank you too. I see you all in the little squares, and I look forward to seeing some of you in the program. It's just going to be wonderful to have that kind of connection and watch you all blossom together with us. What a treat.
Thank you, Jack.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Tami.
Tara. Thanks, friends.
Thank you, Tami. Thank you,
Thanks, friends.
friends. All love.
Thanks, friends.
Thank you, Tami. Thank you,
Thanks, friends.
friends. All love.
Thanks, friends.
Thank you, Tami. Thank you,
Thanks, friends.
friends. All love.
Thanks, friends.
Thank you.